Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today on the Grain of Salt Show. I am your humble host, Wild Bill, and I'll be bringing you the grain of salt today. Been talking about the subject, the elect, God's elect. And I've got, if you could see the inside of my pulpit here, you would see there's paper laying everywhere. I want to do a good job and bring you this teaching or this subject line to the best of my ability with what I've got available to me right now. Anyway, we can always do better. So when we say we're doing our best, no, we could always do better. So, but having said all that, we will begin. Don't quite remember where I left off in the last video, but we're going to just pick up and run. But the subject of the doctrine of the elect, and the doctrine of election is not new to the New Testament. I mean, so you can go back to the Old Testament and you can see these words are used throughout. I mean, think about Abraham. He was selected or chosen by God out of the Ur of the Chaldees, and he picked him up and chose him and said, I want you to go to a land I'll show you. And we can see that over there in Psalm 105, and just happen to have my Bible open to that right now. We see, he says in Psalm 105, verse 6, he said, O seed of Abraham, his servant, children of Jacob, his chosen ones, his elect, his chosen ones. And we see over there later in the Psalms, it says in a place, it says, God has chosen Jacob for himself. Chose Jacob. Deuteronomy chapter 7, I'm going to turn to that because that's a lot to try to remember. But Deuteronomy chapter 7 starts in verse 6. It says, For you are a set-apart people to Yahuwah, your Elohim. Yahuwah, your Elohim, has chosen you to be a people for himself, a treasured possession above all the peoples on the face of the earth. Yahuwah did not set his love on you, nor chose you because you were more numerous than any other people, for you were the least of all peoples, but because of Yahuwah loving you, and because of him guarding the oath which he swore to your fathers, Yahuwah has brought you out with a strong hand and ransomed you from the house of bondage, from the hand of Pharaoh, sovereign of Egypt. God here in these verses says he chose you. And he makes it clear that he didn't choose them. And I think in another place it says something else that I'll tell right here. But he didn't choose them because they were more numerous or special in any other way other than he just decided to set his love on them. In another place, he said, you were not a great people. You were a stiff-necked bunch. It wasn't because you were so wonderful that I chose you. It's because I wanted to choose you. And essentially, that's what he's saying here. And, Israel, in one place, he calls them, I think it's in the Psalms. No, it's in Isaiah. He said, Israel, mine elect. Uses these terms all through the Old Testament. My chosen ones, my set-apart ones, my elect, he says. In the New Testament, we see this kind of language. Over there in Matthew 24, and I mean, it's all through the New Testament. But Matthew 24, he talks about how for the sake of the elect, those days were shortened, talking about the days of the tribulation, so that his chosen ones would be able to survive. And he goes on to say that false Christ and false prophets will arise and will show signs in order to deceive, if possible, even the very elect. So, and you know, he's talking about his elect, his chosen ones, his selected. And we see these words and we don't see the word church. But I want you to know that that's who he's referring to. He's not, he's giving all these terms for us to be able to understand that they are picked out by him. These people that he has chosen before the foundation of the world, they're called his elect, his selected, his chosen ones. They're not called believers right here. They're not called Christians right here in Matthew 24. They're called the elect. In verse 31, he says that he will send his messengers with a great sound of a trumpet. You remember that verse? And they will gather them from who? Who are them? He says in that verse, it says they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. They're going to gather his elect. In Luke 18, we read another verse that says, shall Elohim not do right by all means to his own elect who cry out to him day and night? His elect, not your choice, his choice. Believers are not called, believers are called his elect, his chosen ones, his selected, his set apart, his sanctified. And I know people have a real problem with this, but it's simply there in the scriptures. Romans chapter 8, I ain't going to have much time to get into this. I can't turn to it quick enough, but I'll try to do it from my feeble mind. But he says over there in Romans chapter 8, he said, who will bring any charge against God's elect? You remember that verse? He goes on to say, it is God who declares right or justifies. Who's going to bring a charge against God's elect? You remember those verses prior to that? They are, it's just too much to try to get into in this video. But essentially, I wanted you to see, and there's a whole lot more verses that has the word elect. His people are called his elect. Take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. We're going to continue this, and it's going to get better and better. Remember the widows, the orphans, and the poor. They're the ones who need your help.